Hello, this is Gareth. Welcome along to Somewhere on Earth. It is Tuesday, the 23rd of April, 2024. We're in London and we have voices from Australia and Brazil. And we have a voice from the other side of the table, because Glenn Waddington is here, expert commentator as I live and breathe. Good to see you again, Glenn. How are you?
Very good, actually, yes. And it's the first time we've seen each other since our Digital Planet reunion, isn't it?
So it is, that's right. The last time we were emotionally saying farewell and having hugs outside that wine bar at quite late at night as we went for our taxis. Yeah. That was a lovely evening, though.
It was very special. And any of the listeners today who came along, because they're long-term Digital Planet listeners too, as well as now Somewhere on Earth, thanks a lot for being there. It was a really special group of people.
It meant a lot, my goodness, yeah. And again, I always like to explain this to newer Somewhere on Earth listeners that we some of us on this team, I think pretty much all of us, came from a program called Digital Planet. It's where we go on about it a little bit. We had a reunion, and it's just really, really touching that there are people who were sufficiently attached to a radio show that's not been on air for a year, still to come along the night before a 4-day bank holiday and be there and be supportive and be lovely and come along and have a chat and so on. People who'd flown in from other countries as well, from the United States, from Germany and elsewhere. It's like, wow, how humbling. Thank you. And that was the last. Of course, that was the last time we saw each other get in.
It was,
yeah. And it was a good old laugh as well. We had a nice time. So, what else? As we have our little chit-chatty bit to ease ourselves into the podcast, I'm always interested in what you've been up to, what you've been thinking about, what your gossip is. So, what do you have this time then, Glenn?
Well, actually, I think it was a week after that. I was involved in a special TEDx, which was at my University of Greenwich, which is the third one they've done, but I was hosting this one, and we did it at a virtual production studio with this amazing screen, slightly curved, on which they were projecting fantastic scenarios or scenographies, or made up of evolving animations and moving pictures, some of them coming through Game Engine into play, behind each of the speakers for their TEDx inputs.
So kind of generative, you mean, then? So
it was fixed, it was pre-produced, but it was generative in its own way. So like a tree that was growing and little stars coming out in the sky. Very, very simply illustrative, not literal, but illustrative of the speaker, but not distracting from the speaker, in fact, kind of surrounding them. And it was a very special experience. And, the audience loved it. And I think it was probably a first TEDx to use this kind of, virtual production methodologies of today that places like Target 3D are producing. So, it was a really interesting event to host.
That sounds lovely. We didn't have anything quite that fancy at our DP reunion, did we?
No, it was a bit the opposite, yes.
I'm feeling very inadequate there, but nonetheless. Well, what a lovely example of stuff that you've been up to. Thanks, Glenn. Here we go. And coming up today, we'll tell you about the world's top cybercrime hotspots. Now, this is thanks to a new study that's surveyed a whole load of experts to home in on the countries that harbour the most cybercrime. So, what kinds of crime are we talking about? And why does the list matter? How might it help? Speaking of top experts, plenty of them were to be found at the recent Rio Web Summit. It's one of the big gatherings on the annual tech calendar. And we have a report. It's all right here on the Somewhere on Earth podcast. Now, Russia tops the list when it comes to the countries that host cybercrime. Next on that list are Ukraine, China, the USA, Nigeria, and Romania. And the UK is pretty high up on that list as well. So reports an international team of researchers. The data comes from questionnaires completed anonymously by 92 cybercrime experts. The researchers say that this study approach gets over one of the biggest challenges when you're looking into this sort of thing, because by their nature, those who are up to the bad stuff online, they're pretty hard to trace and to identify, concealing themselves with proxy servers and the like, so they're pretty invisible. Now, I've been hearing more about the study and its results from Dr Miranda Bruce, postgraduate fellow at the University of Oxford, and she's also at the University of New South Wales, Canberra. We began by discussing how Miranda and her colleagues went about researching the topic.
Up till now, we've been able to collect a lot of data about victims, and we've been able to map where victims are, especially at the national level. We've also been able to collect data on the kinds of attacks that happen and the underground marketplaces that cybercriminals operate in. All these things, they're sometimes a little bit hard to find, but in general, relatively easy to collect all of this information. One thing that has really been missing from the data on cybercrime as a global phenomenon is where cybercrime is actually coming from. So where the cybercrime offenders are physically, geographically located. And so one of the big motivations behind this was to be able to map cybercrime itself. And we wanted to do that because we wanted to help lift the veil of anonymity around these offenders. But we were actually also really, one of the core kind of academic motivations behind this was to have a better understanding about cybercrime and how it operates as a type of crime. So this index is part of a larger project, the CrimGov project, which looks into organized crime across the world, all different types of organized crime. And so the index is part of that project on sort of theorizing crime in a different way. And so the way that we're theorizing cybercrime in this project is to say that cybercrime is not this huge, global, fluid, sort of anonymous person in a hoodie in any basement across the world kind of phenomenon. It actually has a very local dimension to it.
Your approach has been to go to cyber criminal experts and then survey them about their views on where the cyber criminals are.
Is that exactly correct. The thing about cybercrime and cybercrime offenders is that it's impossible to figure out where all of them are, right? Finding any population in a kind of scientific academic way, being able to figure out all of the members of a population is incredibly difficult, if not impossible. And that's especially the case with people who are part of illicit activity. So they're in academia, they're referred to as a hidden population. So what we need, because we can't actually figure out where cybercriminals are in a way that's reliable, with things like technical data, we can't actually trace where all the cybercriminal activity is coming from because they can hide where that activity is coming from. That's one of the things they're really good at. So we need a proxy. And what that means is that we need another kind of data set that's as close to the data set that we're after as possible. And so the data that we have access to that is as close as possible to the location of cybercrime offenders is the data that these experts have on the location of cybercrime offenders. And the thing about these experts is that they are, in some senses, almost just as hard to find and track down and get them to respond to emails as cybercrime offenders are. They're really hard because their job is to be anonymous. Their job is to hide themselves so that they can find these people. So tracking these people down and getting them to do the survey, very difficult.
And so one of the things you did, wasn't it, is you got them to rank different countries across 3 different measures in terms of the impact of cybercrime in those countries and other things. So what were you asking these cybercrime experts?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that we designed this survey is, first of all, we defined 5 major types of cybercrime. And that was technical products and services, attacks and extortion, data and identity theft, scams, and cashing out and money laundering. And there are different types of cybercrime that fit into all of those 5 categories. So what our experts did is, when they opened the survey, we defined those categories for them, and then we went through each category one by one, and we asked the experts to nominate up to 5 countries that they believed were the most significant sources of cybercrime. Now, importantly, one of the big things about the survey is that it really hinges on the expertise of our participants. So to keep the data as high quality as possible, the experts didn't have to nominate 5 countries if they weren't absolutely sure that they could think of or thought that there were 5 countries that were significant sources. So they could nominate up to 5, or they could even skip an entire category. For example, if they felt like they weren't expert enough in cashing out and money laundering schemes, they didn't have to nominate any countries in there. So that was a really important part of the survey design, was to ensure that experts were only talking about the categories that they're actually expert in, which is another reason why we can really rely on this data and use it as a global metric. The second thing that they did was, for each of the countries they nominated, let's say they only nominated one country, the UK, then in the next page they looked at the UK and we asked them to rate that country. So at no point were they ranked. They were just asked to rate that country according to these 3 measures. So the first measure, as you say, was we asked them to think about the impact of the cybercrimes that are produced in that country. And then we asked them to rate the skills of the cybercriminals that operate there. So we asked about the professional skill of the cybercriminals and the technical skill of the cybercriminals. And so basically they rated on a scale of 1 to 10 for every single country that they nominated through all of the categories, and that was it. And that's the data that we used to generate the index.
So what did you find then? What would you say that were the big headline findings?
So the big headline findings, the top 10 countries that are in the index, they're probably not that surprising. But the really surprising thing, and one of the reasons I'm so glad that we did this project, is that there are far more than 10 countries. So often you'll see, if you look up top 10 cybercrime hotspots, you'll find endless cybersecurity blogs and even reports from law enforcement agencies and government agencies that list the top 10, maybe the top 15 countries that produce cybercrime. But never do they sort of publish how exactly they put this data together. But our study found 97 different countries that were nominated as cybercrime hotspots. So our understanding of cybercrime and which countries actually produce a lot of cybercrime, now we can look at a much bigger picture. And that's really, really important for understanding not only how cybercrime works in a kind of academic sense or even in a law enforcement sense, but it also gives us way more avenues of research and investigation and intervention into different countries that probably wouldn't have been considered significant cybercrime hotspots by anybody other than these experts who don't share that data because they can't or won't, and the people and the law enforcement agencies living in that country. So that's really, for me, the big thing, is that we actually have way more to look at when we're thinking about cybercrime and geography.
That's Miranda Bruce. So, listening intently to that, Glenn Boddington, and raises all kinds of questions, doesn't it, this cybercrime list. What was some of the stuff that most jumped out at you, Glenn, from this research?
Well, I think it's very interesting why some countries have cybercrime hotspots. And we report, that she's very clear, Miranda, that she's got more to do. Yeah,
exactly.
More
it's very much an initial research.
And I was wondering about the skills base and the fact that actually, of course, for many people working with coding, with hacking of various kinds, there's a lot of self-taught stuff going on now. People get down to it, don't they? They spend hours and they learn how to do this. And if they can't use those skills, those self-taught skills, or whether they've been through education for it, technical college or whatever, within their own country to do a real job, like cybersecurity, the other side of cybercrime, then maybe that's why they end up becoming cybercriminals.
Yeah, or maybe if there are jobs, but they're just not that particularly well paid. So you're super bright, you've got loads of talent in coding, perhaps you don't know how to do a whole lot of other stuff. You are going to think you'll follow the money, quite possibly. I won't say you, as in everyone would do. But anyway, I think your point's very well made. You can see the temptations there, and it might say a little bit about what would get some of these countries high up on the list. Because you've heard about different ways, haven't you, Glenn, about initiatives to retrain people, to harness the talent so that it doesn't go to the dark side.
No, this has been in debate for a while, the fact that, it's two sides of the same coin. Your cyber criminal, cyber security expert, really has a kind of choice to go one way or the other. And there was an initiative which was near Manchester. I think it was called the Hackers House. It may still be going. But anyway, they were working with young cyber criminals who'd been kind of caught out, like in their bedrooms, doing naughty things like trying to break into bank security and trying to break into corporate companies, being caught by the police. But they were retraining them, helping them to actually kind of move from the dark side to the light side. So in other words, well, you've learned a lot doing your cyber criminal activities. You've obviously got a good brain for this, but you could use it in cybersecurity, and we'll help you retrain and get a good job in cybersecurity because we need you to be expert in that because we need this expertise. So I'm wondering whether that's, a very interesting initiative.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then you can go home and tell your parents what you actually do for your day job without them kicking you out of the family.
Although, of course, we never know. Maybe there's cybersecurity experts who do their very good day jobs. They go home in the evenings and play around with cybercrime. You never know,
knows what they get up to. Yeah, all right.
But interesting that there's a whole new industry which is coming from those two angles.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of money being spent on it and lost on it. Yeah. So
Now, spoiler alert, next week we're going to be talking about passwords, which is very much about what we can do, obviously, at the individual level to secure our bank accounts or our webmail or whatever it might be. But one of the things that's concerning you, Glenn, this week, especially in this whole context of cybercrime, is at more of the corporate level, isn't it? That, in other words, we can probably do as much as we want to with our passwords and our own individual cybersecurity, but that don't necessarily make us completely cyber safe.
No, it's that part, because I'm not a cybersecurity expert or cybercrime expert, but I do know a lot about data and identity, and therefore theft of that, which is very personal, very individual, and very upsetting. Yeah, and you're right. However much we do on securing ourselves, quite often these attacks, are on companies who are storing our information, whether it's health information, whether it's your the payroll
like
information,
cloud provider or something that you subscribe to,
etc. And they get attacked. And if they don't pay the ransom, they haven't got the right security in place, so they get attacked. If they don't pay the ransom or they get behind, get muddled up, etc., personal data is revealed, and that could be my personal data that is revealed. And then what do I do? What do I do? Because the company's not going to look after me. My personal data's out there. So I wonder I'm really wondering what the route ways and pathways are to actually, support your own digital identity. But once it's in someone else's, big corporate's data, big data, then what happens?
Yeah. And how are you covered then? So if you just trust one of these companies with a load of your data, and then a load of that stuff ends up on the dark web and you suffer material or psychological loss as a result, what the heck?
It is. I know someone it has happened to, and it is very, very upsetting because identity loss, even if it is just data, it's no longer just your email and your date of birth. We know that there's a lot more detailed information, and health information particularly gets very upsetting. So, there's this website, No More Ransom, where you can go to check whether if you've been caught yourself individually, but that still doesn't deal with you suddenly hear on the radio, that your health trust has been hacked and that your data therefore is out there.
Yeah, then what?
There's no protection.
Okay, so nomoreransom.org is a place to go to as a useful resource.
If you've personally been got a ransomware attack. But maybe some listeners might come in with some ideas for us next week.
Let's hope. Let us know, dear listeners. You probably know our socials by now, and I'm sure you have our WhatsApp programmed into your phone. And you may be a listener in one of the 110 countries from which people listen to this podcast, according to our most recent data, across 1,289 cities. Now, I think I'll qualify that. We think that probably this data, when it says city, it means probably conurbation of some sort. And I'm not sure necessarily. Exactly. There are literally nearly 1,300 places as big as LA where people listen. But you may get the idea. But we know that we have listeners in the likes of Guatemala City, in Salford in the UK, and in Nashville, Tennessee.
Wonderful.
So cool. Yeah. Good. Glad you're there, folks. Thanks for being there. All right. Now, it's where the future goes to be born. That's one way that the Web Summit has been described. Now, this is a roster of events around the world attracting the most influential players in the world of technology. More than 34,000 people have just gathered at Web Summit Rio. One of them was our very own Angelica Mari.
So we're here at Web Summit Rio. Over 30,000 people from all over the world came to Rio de Janeiro in Brazil to discuss the future and especially how technology impacts people's lives. And I'm here with Andre Vellozo, CEO at Drumwave, and we're going to talk about data ownership. Welcome to Somewhere on Earth, Andre.
Thank you, Angelica. Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here with you guys.
Tell us a little bit about your company, Drumwave, and what does your business model have to do with this whole thing of empowering individuals to have control of their data?
Drumwave is a US-based company. It was born in the US.
It was born in the US,
Yes.
right?
But it has
It has Brazilian
a
blood,
lot of
right?
DNA, a lot of Brazilian DNA, tons of Brazilian DNA. And we have played by different rules to allow this company to be born and to thrive. The vision of the company is to give you autonomy over your data.
You came up with some interesting concepts in your product stack. You've come up with a concept of a data wallet and even data savings accounts. Can you unpack this for us? And how does that differ from another digital wallet solution?
So when you think about data, right, and the rails that we have now in the world, you have the logistics for goods and services pretty much figured out. So we can have like this bottle of water on the table, products being transported all over the world. We use trucks, ships, airplanes, roads. We have logistics for stuff. And we also have logistics for money. So you have the banks, central banks, POS, credit cards. You can use money to exchange value for value because you have the logistics for that. So when you think about data and the fact that everything that you do generates value in data, the rails for the data, it doesn't exist. So imagine when you go buy water or coffee in a coffee shop, you can get the coffee and you can pay for the coffee. But as you do that, you're generating like 6 packages of data. Packages coming from your phone, from your payment method, from your consumer behavior, tons of data. And this data it's a positive externality that is not captured by anyone.
Right.
But it's part of your life.
And how does that wallet operate?
So the wallet are the rails and the infrastructure. So it's a bunch of APIs that allows you to, in every touch point, to capture the specific data from this transaction.
So APIs being the plumbing between all of these interfaces.
Between two very simple things. Like the reason you can use payment system is because you have credit cards, you have bank accounts, and you have gateways.
And these things have to talk to each other.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So what we built, it's a version of the financial system inspired by the Brazilian system of payments that you can use data as part of the transaction. We call it the whole transaction.
How do any of us go about transacting with our own data?
Imagine that you're pretty soon, we expect, right? Your bank, your carrier, or another kind of company that you have a direct relationship with, your bank is going to go to you and he's going to tell you, hey, Angelica, you trust me with the custody of your money for the last 20 years. Would you trust me with the custody of your data? And then you're going to ask, bank, what do you want to do with my data? And the bank is going to respond to you, well, I'm not going to buy a motorcycle and have a road trip. I'm not going to buy an island in the Caribbean, but I'm going to do with your data the same thing I do with your money.
And who would do the valuation of my data?
The market gives the price. Valuation for data. It's something that we've been working for almost 10 years. If you remember back, and we're in Brazil, right? Do you remember URV? We got the URV idea and the math behind URV, and we blended this with flood channel information theory. Flood channel was a guy that has created binary code. Everything that exists digital was Flood's work.
URV, just to make it clear for our listeners, it stands for
the real
unit of value.
Yeah.
Of value.
Which is the name of the currency, the Brazilian currency.
Yeah, it was the predecessor to the Brazilian real, which is Brazil's currency.
Exactly.
Would the value of my data change according to my life circumstances?
Depending on the use case, depending on the moment. Value changes every day.
How far are we from getting to that scenario of a data-based transaction scenario?
I think everybody agrees that the world is going to a data-driven economy, to a data economy. So far, the way we think about it, most of it, it's a data marketplace. It's a marketplace of data sets. But that's not where I believe we are going to, because we already have a marketplace for data. There's plenty of companies, plenty of plumbing for that. And we have been buying and selling data since forever. It's nothing new there.
But everyday people are not getting paid for that.
It's a different thing. It's a one use case. What I'm talking about, it's about a marketplace that is driven by data. We live now in a market moved by money. Everything is measured by money. Everything is going to become measured by data. So you can see that huge investments on infrastructure.
So that's Andre Vellozo, who is CEO at that company Drumwave. And this is very much on your turf, isn't it, Glenn? This whole point about data ownership and, just this whole kind of business model around Drumwave. What did you make of what you've just heard?
No, it was a fascinating interview, actually. And I think I went to Drumwave's website immediately to read a lot more about it. And they've got this very interesting statements. They're saying that the mostly free access to our collective personal data will likely dry up by the late 2020s. And the concept of measuring to check the value of your data, which Angelica is talking about in that report, has become really important. How do we actually start to value data? And data has become the most single valuable commodity in the world. You know that thing, data is the new oil, that kind of statement.
Yeah. It was much refuted though, wasn't it, that particular analogy?
Well, it looks like it's going there. Yeah, it's going there.
But nonetheless, a very important resource. Your point is very well made.
Yeah, and I think, even from Tim Cook in 2019, the Apple CEO, Apple obviously are very careful with data. They're the one place it is in the main. But he makes a statement which is basically saying, stop identifying information and using customers' data. If you're going to carry on, do it, strip the identity completely and go towards synthetic data, or just stop collecting it altogether.
Yeah, sure. And like synthetic data for training like AI models and stuff like that.
Yeah, but this is where it gets interesting, isn't it? Because data is the lifeblood of AI training. Yeah, so the same data that powers our AI systems, we collectively produce it in droves. But in this discussion, the monetization and the monitoring and curation of that could be in our own hands. Yeah, if we owned our own data, which I think we will ultimately, and there's a big shift towards it. Yeah, Web 3.0 is pointing towards that too. Yeah, but actually, if we owned our own data, we can become our own brokers. We don't need data brokers who are selling our data to companies to make products, etc., and then sell them back to us. We actually can trade with our own data, and we can use it ourselves to find the products that we might be interested in through the connections that we allow our data to make. Yeah. So it's about empowering the citizen to capitalise your own data. Because at the moment we can't use it ourselves. We can't even access it. We can't see what's happening to analyse it.
No, of course. And increasingly we are able to find out what data is being held. Certainly through GDPR, for instance, we can find out what companies are holding which of our data. But it's still not exactly easy to access, or as easy as it could be. Or even if it is easy to access, in all fairness, then what the heck do you do with it?
And how do you analyse it?
Yeah.
And how do you go, actually, now I know that, I'll actually set my data off to do this and this and collect that for me. Self-sovereign data is the phrase.
Okay. Self-sovereign data. Yeah. And, just finally, and say just in less than a minute, if you can, Glenn, what about examples of this self-sovereign data? Things like different crypto wallets that you've been looking into. There's like Binance Web3 wallet, I think, is one that you have in mind.
These are already examples of decentralized data points. So yes, Binance, the Web3 wallet for crypto wallet, and Ontology with its decentralized crypto fund. But actually what's more interesting is things like data unions, which are enabling small companies to allow their users to share their data and get paid for it. And Streamer is actually a decentralized network which allows people to stream live media and real-time data at scale. So they're emerging. There's lots of these different places all over the world. They're emerging, and I think Drumwave is one of those groups, which is why the interview was so interesting for me.
Absolutely. So interesting that we'll have a bit more in our podcast extra, by the way, more from Andre and Angelica at that Web Summit Rio. But that'll do for today. Let's do some quick credits for you. Let's just see who's behind the glass now. I think Keziah is still around, but we've definitely, there we are, we have Dylan on the desk there as well, doing a grand job. The production manager is Liz Toohey. The expert commentator is Glenn Boddington. I don't usually credit myself, but I'm in the mood today, so I'm Gareth, and the producer is Angelica Mari. Producer and editor, I should say, as well. Very, very important. Thanks for listening, and stay with us for the subscription extra if you're a subscriber. Thanks, folks. Bye.